6 years ago was the first time I ever booted up Hollow Knight. I had seen my cousin was playing it almost daily. I knew basically nothing about the game, but I was intrigued. I saw the game was on PlayStation Plus, which I was already paying for, so I thought, what the hell, let's give it a try. Now, to anyone who knows me, you know this went on to become my favorite game of all time. But what a lot of you don't know is that it very nearly wasn't even a game I finished. Hollow Knight is a game praised for more things than I can possibly list. From its gameplay, to its world design, its incredible music and art, its depth and attention to detail, the more you delve into this world, the more it rewards you. And the crazy thing is, I almost completely missed all of it. This is probably one of my favorite things to discuss when it comes to gaming, which is finding a game at the right time. See, the thing is, it doesn't really matter how incredible a game is, because if you aren't in the right headspace to play the game, it's just not gonna click for you. If what you're craving is a casual game to spend time with your friends, then it doesn't make sense to load up a game like God of War, because your headspace just won't be aligned with the tone of the game. Likewise, if you want to play something for a couple of hours and then put it down, an open world journey like Breath of the Wild might not be the right game. This becomes even more difficult when you begin a game you know nothing about. You can't possibly know what the tone of the game is going to be ahead of time. I knew literally nothing about Hollow Knight going into it, only that it was good, or so I was told. I played through the opening sequence, learning the basic movement and combat, and before too long, I would descend into Hallownest. Immediately, Hollow Knight tells you what kind of game it is, because the moment you descend down the well, it's up to you as far as where you want to go next. Left or right. Each side offering different enemies, rewards, collectibles. However, eventually you'll find yourself here, at the game's first big boss. The problem being, I currently suck at the game. I'm still learning its combat, and after getting my ass handed to me by these big guys, I decided to explore elsewhere. Eventually that leads me to the game's first big boss. Wait. This is probably my favorite thing about Hollow Knight. There's actually several bosses you can face off as your first boss, and depending on your skill level, it will probably determine which you face first. Grustmother is seen as the easiest, followed by the False Knight. And there's also a very cheeky hidden boss for the truly god-tier gamer in form of the Brooding Moloch. That isn't a wall, as much as it is a redirection in this game. You can either get better at the game and come back at a different time, or find a way around the obstacle. So I spent hours in the Forgotten Crossroads exploring every nook and cranny of this place, unlocking everything I could, and making note of the things that I'd have to come back for later. Eventually, through a lot of trial and error, I learned a pattern for these enemies. That leads you then to the False Knight, who has very similar attack mechanics to those enemies you just fought. Defeating the False Knight leads you down to meet the Shaman, who then gives you your first spell, and then that unlocks the next area, which is back where I started. Now, it's important to note, I've never played a Metroidvania before this game, so I was very confused when the room I thought would let me into the next area just looped me back to where I started. So I kind of begun to wander aimlessly, confused as to where to go next. Every room was just another dead end, and that feeling of endless exploration started to feel more like you were trapped in a box with a single way out, and there was no guidance as to where to go next. Thus begins the first big problem that Hollow Knight has. The first opening sequence of the game is kind of the make or break for a lot of players. While I was totally in love with the gameplay and the art, and couldn't wait to keep exploring and see more, the game unfortunately forces you into a very specific path, at least for these opening hours. Yes, you can explore as much as you like, but the only way to get to the next area is to utilize the dash, which you can only get after beating a certain boss, in a certain area, which I hadn't gotten to yet. Luckily, I did eventually find this room and realized that you can use your spell to get through. But at this point, I was frustrated from running around aimlessly, and if you know anything about this next area, you should know that feeling was just about to be so much stronger. Greenpat is a cavern of nature. Its paths are winding and crisscross, and it's very confusing. Here is where you meet this character, which at the time was mysterious, but now everybody knows who it is. And the game makes it pretty clear you're supposed to follow them. Unfortunately, I lost track of her and spent hours falling into toxic water, getting poisoned, and getting very frustrated as far as to where to go next. After hours and hours, eventually I find where I'm supposed to go, and get my ass handed to me by these guys. A good thing this game does is that it forces you to at least fight one tough enemy before a big boss. Usually this enemy utilizes attack patterns that are similar to the boss, which subconsciously prepares you when you see those same attacks reappear in the boss fight. It's actually a really clever way to train your players, so when you face a hard fight, you already feel like you've been practicing for this moment long before you got here, and it makes you want to push through. I eventually find my way to Hornet, who, as you'll probably guess, kicked my ass over and over and over again. And each time she would send me all the way back to the last bench I found. Now, I kind of just lasered focus on defeating her, and it wasn't until much later that I realized that there was a bench directly underneath the arena. So the run back could have been a lot better, but it is what it is. Anyways, upon finally beating her, I was excited to try out my new ability and see where to go next. And after wandering for hours and hours, I just couldn't figure it out. As I mentioned before, I had never played a Metroidvania. The idea that progression was strictly locked behind abilities was a foreign idea to me. That I wouldn't be collecting keys to open doors, instead, I'd be collecting fireballs to open paths or dashes to reach places I couldn't get to before. So after a lot of wandering and just not going to the right rooms, I put the game down. I moved on. I had a good time with the game, but I just didn't understand what I was supposed to do next. There's no tutorials or guides or mission quests or markers. It was just me and these empty rooms that didn't lead anywhere. Hollow Knight is very different, in the sense that there's no quest markers, no nudge to where to go. It kind of just drops you in this world and it expects you to live in it and find your way through. And the truth is, I wasn't in the right mindset for something like that. But a few months later, something happened which would change that completely.
New lockdowns are being put in place in a number of regions. Amidst the ongoing surge in infections, health officials are considering ending even outdoor dining. And in most of California, stay-at-home orders have been imposed.
The world was shut down. I was stuck indoors with nothing but time in my hands. So I actually started playing games a lot more often. Between my Animal Crossing sessions, I needed something else for entertainment. So anyways, after 2 months of lockdown, I eventually decided to give Hollow Knight another try. And thus began the greatest journey I think I've ever been on. To be fair, at this point the game is still very locked down, but eventually I do find a godforsaken ledge which leads me to the next place. At this point the game is flowing at a more natural pace. I feel like there's plenty of places to explore, with me now understanding how progression works a little bit better. I'm not looking for keys, I'm looking for my next ability to overcome a certain obstacle. I eventually find my way down to the Mantis village, and get my ass handed to me again. However, after enough trial and error, I get the item which completely changed the entire game for me. I think this is the defining moment for me in the entire Hollow Knight Let's Play. At this point I had spent hours exploring, dying and exploring and hitting dead end after dead end. And after facing hordes of these super tough Mantis enemies, I get an ability that made me realize just how small the world had been up until this point. Suddenly I was scaling walls and dashing over obstacles. The movement was insane. I felt like all the limitations I struggled with were suddenly removed. And it felt like the entire world was accessible now. Obviously that isn't entirely accurate, but what was true is that just how the game asks you that simple question at the start of the game, right or left, this felt like that, but 1,000 times stronger. It felt like the game was asking me where to next and pointed at the entire map. This video isn't about my entire journey with Hollow Knight, my pathing or anything like that. It's an exploration about the beauty of right time and right place. And the fact that it being the wrong time now doesn't mean it can't be the right time later. There's so many games that are out there waiting for you to experience moments like this, and sometimes you just need a small moment of self-reflection and see if it's really the right time for you to experience this. I had to have the entire world taken away from me before I was ready to delve into this one. There's so many parallels to Hollow Knight and the world I found myself living in. Hollow Knight is about exploring this broken world, ravaged by an infection. The towns are dead and empty, you crave for these connections, but the ones you find are few and far between. The path you take is forged from the little you can find to push yourself into the next place you want to be. Taking opportunity where you can find it, and when a challenge is placed in front of you, it's not cowardly to turn around and get what you need to push past it. It's also not foolish to bash your head at it until you win, because if you do, you will win. It's a game that constantly reminds you that no matter how tough the challenge is, that deep down, you're tougher. It's my favorite game of all time, and you should play it, but maybe not right now. Maybe just when the time is right for you. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through. If you enjoy content like this, please consider subscribing and liking this video. It's completely free and it helps this channel out tremendously. If you've already been subscribed, thank you so much for sticking around. I would love to make more videos like this. Leave a comment below sharing your experience with this game so we can keep the conversation going. Alright, until the next one.